Here's an image that's pretty easy to edit because it doesn't need very much editing at all. Racehorses returning to the stables after exercise, but the misty morning has added something. Looking at this thumbnail in Photoshop's bridge, you can see that I did add an exposure compensation of around about 1.3 stops. Misty mornings like this will fool the camera into thinking that it needs less exposure than it actually does. And we need to compensate for that. And of course, if you do compensate, it does make the editing quicker and easier. Now, I often bang on about attention to detail in my editing videos because I think it's an important part of what we do, and in my view, often overlooked. So let's look at the composition of this image in Adobe Camera Raw. It's not too bad, is it? But maybe if I'd had a little more space in front of the lead horse, that may have been marginally better. Also, maybe a little more space beneath the hooves of the lead horse too. That would have been nice. We could lose a little bit off the top. Now these are pretty minor crops, but if we can achieve them easily, then why not? Even if it's only us that ever notices. The fence along the right, that doesn't do a great deal for me. So once again, if we can deal with that and remove it easily, then why not? So let's begin with a crop from the top of the image, and we'll deal with the other issues later in Photoshop. So I just want to bring it down just a tiny amount, and I'll hit the Enter key and we'll begin our manipulations from here. Now, as per my usual, I'm going to go to the Auto button on the right hand side and give that a click and use that as a preset or a starting point. Then we may have some personal edits from there, but I think in this instance they're going to be fairly minimal. Maybe slightly lighter or slightly darker, maybe with the exposure. But because it's a misty morning, I don't think I want to impact any more on the contrast, and the colour looks just about right given the conditions. Incidentally, I don't think this image needs our customary strategic editing. Because of the conditions and the exposure compensation, we have a pretty good image and it just requires global editing. We could take a look at noise suppression. To do that, we would be zooming in to about 100%, but we'll go a little bit further than that. I'll right click and I'll zoom to 200%. Now we can see we do have a little bit of noise there, but really it's insignificant. But because we have the option to deal with noise, I'm going to go to my Detail tab and click to take a look at what I can do. I may apply a little bit. I'm not in favour of taking all noise away because it can look a little bit unnatural. See what I mean? There's a before, there's an after. Maybe that's a little unnatural. Let's just drop it down a little bit to about 35. Before, after. I think that looks pretty good. Let me click Enhance, and what Adobe Camera Raw is currently doing over on the right hand side is creating a new thumbnail. So if we were to go back into Bridge now and take a look, we'd find we've got two thumbnails, the original and the one with the noise reduction applied. Now at this stage, I think we could consider some creative choices. For example, we could choose to remove the colour. I think that's a legitimate choice given the conditions and the content of the image. And if we wanted to make a little more of the softness of the mist, we can sometimes use a reduction in clarity and or dehaze and or texture to achieve that. In this particular occasion, I'm not sure it actually helps, but it's a personal choice we may wish to make. If we just take a little bit of the clarity off, we don't have to go as far as I did a few moments ago, but you can see there is an option there. I'm going to stay with this black and white version, and I'm going to open this up into Photoshop. Whatever creative choices we decide to make here are largely going to be determined by our mood at the time. So why restrict ourselves to just one choice? I often create 2 or 3 versions of a finished image. I find that over a few weeks or even a couple of months, as I look at the images as thumbnails in Bridge, the strongest or the best of those images tends to show itself to me. With the passage of just a little time, we seem to be much better able to judge. The Photoshop version I have open is the beta version that contains generative fill. I want to use that to increase the size of my image in front of the horse, below the horse, and also to remove that fence. You can find and download this version from your Creative Cloud portal. So what I'd like to do here is to select my crop tool, and I'm going to crop outside of the picture space. So when I click inside, you can see what I mean now when I was talking earlier on about giving a little more space in front of that first horse, and maybe just a little bit of space below the hooves. We don't need a great deal, and if you feel the need to trim the top, then you can recrop here if you feel there is that need. I'm going to hit the enter key to commit that change, but of course now we need to fill in those spaces, and for that we're going to use generative fill. Now to do that, I need to select my rectangular marquee tool and draw a selection along the bottom, just inside the base. I'm just going to nudge that down with the cursor control keys to get it away from the hooves. And one thing I have to do is to go back to my image here, change the mode back to RGB, or the next option will not work. So I'm going to put my cursor into the generative fill and just hit the enter key. I'm going to allow this to work in real time. You can see the green bar moving across, and hopefully it's going to rebuild the base of that image for us and do a first-class job. Why does it always slow down when it gets right to the end? But there we have it. We've got a little bit of a blurry section on the right, but I'm sure we can do that in a second or two. We do get the option to look at 3 different versions, but I don't think we're going to get much better than that. So with the same selection tool, I'm going to select the left-hand side and do exactly the same, hitting the enter key. And this time I'll speed the process up. Now when I say speed the process up, I simply mean I stop my video recording and start it again when it's complete. So what I need to do now is select that right hand side. I'm going to select the polygonal lasso tool for that. So I'm going to start my selection here, click down around that little fuzzy area, around the outer edge, and ask generative fill to do that repair for me. And once again, I'll speed things up. Now every time we ask the generative fill to do a repair for us, we do get 3 versions. So we can click from one to the other and select the one that we feel works best. I think on this particular occasion, I think the first one is pretty good, but maybe I like the second one a little better. Let me go back to my layers, and you can see the layers have been created for all of the sections, so we've still got the original. There's the base, there's the left, and there's the fix of the fence and something which was just blurred on the bottom right corner. And of course you can keep this in layers by saving this as a Photoshop file, but I would go to this option and flatten to finish. Now while Content Aware Fill is only within a beta version of Photoshop, we do have access to it now from our Creative Cloud portal, and it works rather well. Incidentally, if you download this beta version, it will work alongside your original version without affecting it. Now, pretty soon it will be a part of the latest release, and I wonder just how long it's going to be until AI can automatically fix all of the dust spots in our images. The f10 aperture in this shot created quite a few for me to fix, but I spared you that part of the editing. Attention to detail is important because a few of these insignificant small details can quickly add up to be quite a big distraction. Our image editors give us a great way to address them. We just need to take the plunge. I'll see you next time.